for having me on again.
You just published a novel.
Yeah, it's been fun.
J.K. Rowling is a wizard.
Yeah,
Were you working on that when we spoke last? I can't remember for sure.
Yeah, I was. That's right.
How long did it take you to finish it?
Actually, I did it pretty quick. Actually, I kind of started it at the end of last year, and then took a break, and then I wrote most of it over the summer.
Are you a Harry Potter fan?
Yeah, well, yeah, it's always an exciting thing to put it out there and see what people say. I quite enjoy it. I'm getting some good feedback from this book.
That's awesome. I read it.
Yeah.
I liked it. I thought it was an enjoyable read. I thought it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, so it's been a good experience because I wanted to, last time we were talking about world building.
Yeah.
And this was kind of one of the ways I really wanted to learn more about world building, because we also talked about organization, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was kind of just writing off the cuff as opposed to organizing my writing beforehand. I thought, I really, because I can get halfway through a book and I'm like, you know what, I've got this other idea that could make the story great, but because I haven't talked about it in the rest of the book, it's going to kind of sound weird bringing it in. So I decided I thought, yeah. Well,
I'm a total pantser, man. I think we talked about that before. I don't organize anything. In fact, the novel that I'm writing right now, I pulled out 2 total novellas from it and said, okay, you no longer belong. I'm just about to finish. I have 90 pages left of this rewrite, and I'm finally getting the shape of the story that I want to tell. And it's I can't imagine organizing that, sitting down and putting an outline together and saying, okay, this is the story I want to tell, and I'm going to stick to it until I'm done. That just seems impossible. But you're saying you did that with this novel.
Yeah, well, I did it because basically I wanted to really know about world building. So the idea came from, I started really thinking, well, who does this really well? Who does this world building? Who's done this world building stuff really well? And so I started researching, and of course, none other than J.K. Rowling, one of the people that has just done it incredibly and did it before, as she was writing, or even before she started writing her books. And so I just started, it's just the little things, even what food they eat, and, the clothes, just the planning that went into it, I found just really fascinating. And as I started reading all this stuff about it, this idea kind of came to my head because, of course, I was on a lot of fan websites, and there's some people out there that really love Harry Potter.
Yeah, and I think that's an understatement, isn't it? They really, really, really live for the Harry Potter series.
Yeah, and they know that stuff. And as I started reading it, this idea kind of came to me about this obsessed Harry Potter fan that kind of discovers that actually is a magical world, and this is where this kind of satire of fans or fanboys or fangirls kind of became, it kind of grew from there.
Yeah, man, he has your character has a little bit more than just a fandom going, or a fan on for J.K. Rowling. I mean, God, he's got a lifestyle and built up this huge career with it too. Yeah. It's pretty impressive. I mean, as I'm reading that part, I was like, my God, I can't even imagine loving something so much. You have millions of dollars worth of merchandise, and you have $1 million apartment because of it, and you've got this lifestyle that is unbelievable, only because you love something so much.
Yeah, one of the characters in it, Jasper. Yeah, he's gone down that path where he actually has a website dedicated to the series where he just sells merchandise, and people are out there doing it. They do it for Harry Potter, they do it for and other big stories. People are just love this. They're just part of the fandom.
Yeah.
And I got that. That's what kind of interested me, but also, I mean, it's helped me a lot with actually going through the process of writing this book and reading the world building parts of it has really helped me as a writer now with world building. And now I'm actually putting together a new original piece, and I'm just really enjoying the world building that I'm doing, that I've learned from the process of writing this comedy.
That's the amazing part about it for me, is that the best way to learn how to write a novel is to write a novel, and just to keep writing novels and get as good as you possibly can. I mean, your next book is going to be far superior than anything you've written so far, and then following that.
Yeah, I think I'm getting better. I think I'm getting better.
how is the process right now with the new book? How is that working out for you? Are you feeling comfortable with it? Are you relaxed and enjoying the process, or is it still kind of, because man, when I'm in a novel, it's like I feel like I'm drowning in the number of words that I have. You know, I'm like 60,000 or something like right now, and it's like, all right, what
Wow.
do I have? Where am
Yeah.
I in this novel? I mean, how far are you along with the new piece?
I'm still in the world building part of it. You know, I mean, time is always a factor, but I'm just
Yeah.
really, I mean, I'm just getting like pages of, because you know, really my you know, you read Phantom 500 as well, and I kind of want to get back into science fiction. And so with the experience of learning about world building, I'm building this world in the science fiction genre, and it's just, you know, even getting down to like what languages people speak on the planets, and who the people are, and the hierarchy of certain societies, and even down to I'm like doing planning about special foods in this world. And I think it's going to help me when and of course I'm planning out all the chapters. So this is kind of a new experience for
That's
me.
awesome. Organizational writing.
No,
Can't even imagine it. I'm
yeah.
looking at like I'm looking at short fiction that I've written and going, how can I break this up? But I know the story is never going to be the same. You
Yeah.
call J.K. Rowling as a wizard a satire. You
Yeah.
don't consider it fantasy,
Well, yeah, sure, it's fantasy as well.
but because
It's
you're basing
definitely
it on somebody else's IP, you're satirizing it then.
absolutely.
Yeah. And,
Absolutely. So yeah,
and the
I'm
piece
kind of
now
covered.
that you're writing is completely science fiction slash fantasy. You're building it in space. You've got this whole world that you're kind of developing. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's a fascinating idea to go back and to examine J.K. Rowling and see how she did it. Because I don't know, did you learn whether or not she's a pantser or a what do they call it? What's the other one? A gardener, or
Oh,
what's the other one? You write by the seat of your pants or you organize. Which one is J.K. Rowling?
sorry, I kind of broke up a
Oh,
bit then. What were the two
well,
options?
you have pantser, like what we are, where you write by the seat of your pants, and then you have the person who
All right.
organizes the living crap out of their book from beginning to end and never
Yeah.
deviate from that. Did you learn what J.K. Rowling was?
She's definitely the second option. She's definitely been able to organize. You know, I mean, the stories of her just because she was living in a small apartment when she was writing this, and she was just had like notes and notes of, you know, she was handwriting like parts of the world, like, you know, like what the buildings look like, and what the shops were, and personalities, not even actually the storyline, just creating this world. And I just found that really fascinating. And of course lists and lists of spells, and all sorts of interesting, you know, intricacies of
Yeah.
yeah. And it's
She
just
she pulled from her education though too, didn't she? She pulled from history and philosophy and
right.
mythologies. I mean, she's pulling all this stuff together to build her world with things that we
Yeah.
recognize like in an instant if it wasn't, mingled in with this, gigantic, I don't know, would you call it lore or would you call it, you know, I don't know, world, I guess you could say. I mean, it's just amazing
Mm,
what she accomplished.
mm. Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
and
absolutely.
you kind of did it with Phantom 500 as well. I mean, that's a pretty thick piece of writing. And you,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I enjoyed it, but I think I feel as I go forward as a writer that I could do better. I could, you know, I think I've got the imagination, but just the organization could improve.
that's the crux of the whole thing, isn't it? You could always do better. And man, I wish I was more organized. It would make the process a lot better.
Yeah.
Easy. You know what you're
Yeah.
going to do. You're going to sit down and you're going to write 5,000 words on this thing that needs to get written instead of going back to the beginning going, oh crap, I messed this up. I need to rewrite this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or I've added a character in there, or I've deleted a whole character, or I've changed the situation that this one is involved in. It's
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
pain in the butt.
Yeah. 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 And so this is why I embarked on this process to kind of hopefully figure it out and create a better piece of work.
How would you advise somebody do that? If they, do you advise them to explore an organized writer, or kind of just do it, outline it, make it happen?
You know what? I actually don't have advice right now because I'm in the process of doing it myself.
Mm-hmm.
I actually thought, if this does work out, I want to give back and be able to give that advice, but right now I don't have the advice to give because I'm in the process of trying to figure it out myself right now. And
yeah,
if I do go, with this world building that I am trying to create, if it does work out and I write this series, then I can say, okay, now I've got advice. But right now I'm not an expert.
yeah.
I'm still a learner.
So I mean, this is the second time what'd you do with J.K. Rowling? Did you go into it with any ideas, or you just started writing and realized what you were writing at the end of the day?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely went into it with some ideas about how it was going to go and the process of this fan, and I wrote a summary of each chapter. So then I had like a box to start off with of like a blurb. But of course, then I had bookmarked several fan web pages where I could go to maybe if I needed to refer to something about the Harry Potter world in order to help with the storyline. It wasn't as organized as I'm trying to get. I still definitely
still
wrote it off the cuff.
That's pretty organized though. Orson Scott Card does the same thing, where he will start a process or a novel, and he will just put little snippets as his chapter headings where he wants the story to go, and then he'll go back in and just flesh out those snippets until they're actual chapters and parts of the story. And he finishes novels really quickly, and you can get very envious of his work ethic, because he's not dawdling over this word or that word. He's just pounding through the novel itself.
Yeah, right.
And that's a guy who had like one good novel, and the rest of them are part of a that world that he's built up for his entire career.
Yeah. I kind of find it really interesting. I'm not sure if this is a real author or not, but I found this author called Bella Forrest. I don't know if you've ever come across her.
No.
But she sold 7 million books. This is her big, over 7 million books. And she published her first book around the same time I did, in like 2012. I've done 4 books since then. I counted that she has written 80 books.
80? Oh my God. And that's in 5 years.
80. Yeah. And so
God, man,
I try to read
5 times 12 is what, 60. So she's writing more than a book a month. Right?
And so books are coming out. Yeah. And it's just, it's kind of quite phenomenal to see that kind of output. I try to research into who this person is.
Have you read any of her work? Have you bought any of her novels and checked it out? No. See, I wonder quality-wise. What is she writing? I mean, the name kind of reminds me of maybe romance. I'm going to look it up right now. And romance novels are a little bit more easy, right? What is her name? Bella Forrest?
Yeah, Bella Forrest, yeah. So so she's written like a ton of like vampire books, and she's written like like other books like called The Gender Game, which seems very Hunger Games-ish. So she's tailing on popular genre types, where there's already a kind of a readership who may be hungry for more. But I find
that's the thing, though, isn't it? You have to add to the buffet. You really, I mean, if you want to be successful, you can't be original. You've got to be easy to read. You've got to provide the cues that people are looking for, to satisfy that bit of whatever they're, hungry for, and you're going to be successful.
Yeah. Yeah.
She's got 4,611 followers on Goodreads. It's not bad. Wow. She's a 4.5 stars. I mean, this is a person who's written a lot of books and has a big following, but she doesn't have a Wikipedia page. You know what I mean? It's very interesting.
Yeah, yeah, and I tried to research. I wanted to find like interviews from her, but I haven't been able to find any because I just kind of find that really interesting. That kind of output. Like, is it a team of people, or is it her? You know what you know. What is the what's the secret sauce in being able to produce 80 novels?
Remember hearing a
'Cause-
story about a husband and wife that he had lost his job and she wasn't working and they were about to lose their house, and they decided, you know what we're going to do is we're just going to write science fiction stories over and just put them out into the world as fast as we possibly can. And they
Hmm.
saved their home. I mean, it was them working together, probably under a pen name or something, and they were successfully able to manage a career that way. And I don't know whether or not it was, she has one book called Hot Bloods, The Girl Who Dared to Descend. It's
Okay,
kind of, I mean, these are interesting
that, that,
titles
that-
and they're not expensive. I mean, she's an indie, obviously. 99 cents for Gender Game is one of her novels.
yeah,
Gender Game.
yeah,
You can
yeah,
buy the hardcover for 23 bucks. I mean, this is an interesting author, and you're right. She doesn't exist.
yeah. I mean, it might be a team. I found her on some company that hire out speakers, so she does speeches.
You've
But
seen a, did you see her? Does she have any pictures?
yeah, I
Is she?
found one picture. I found one picture of her, and it was on this website where they hire speakers out. You're going to hire someone to come to a convention or some kind of corporate convention, and they'll come and speak about what they've done. To
Oh,
rally.
here she is. She's a blonde woman. She's not unattractive. She's somewhat older, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
well, that's actually, there's a lot of different pictures of Bella Forrest showing up right now, so I'm not even sure if I'm looking at the right person or not. She's writing in
Okay, right.
nonfiction books too. I don't know who she is now. If you click on this
Yeah.
one picture, okay, it is this person. I thought it was. She's not bad looking. I mean, she's pretty. I mean, I'm surprised she doesn't do more stuff out there in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of, and because I've been playing with all this marketing as well for since I've started publishing, social media, and there's tons of supposed experts out there that tell you you've got to have an email list, you got to have a Twitter account, you got to have Facebook, and doing all this stuff. But when I see someone like her, I think, all you really need is you need a lot of books, and you need to keep bringing the books out more and more and more. Stop wasting time like marketing on social media. I mean,
Yeah, we talked about marketing a lot last time, didn't we?
yeah, yeah,
And you mentioned email lists, and I was like, wow, you to buy these things, what, 25 cents a pop or even more than that, I think what the number was. And it was like, okay, who has the time to do that? I mean,
I
if you're
know.
writing all the time and you're trying to work on your craft, who has time to stop and just like do these multi-day projects where you're trying to gather people's information and correspond with them? You know what I
Mm,
mean? As an indie, I mean, I think you're right. You have to write. You have to put content out there.
yeah,
That's the best way to do it.
yeah,
And you can't be
yeah.
fickle. I mean, you have to learn your craft, and you have to learn your craft so well that it basically just dribbles out of your fingers automatically.
Mm, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and produce, produce, produce. Keep writing.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
I
and
wonder what her
I
first
think
book
the
was.
market. I think the marketing would. I think the marketing would probably come from that then. If you've got 10 books and they're all in the same genre, if somebody likes one of them, then you would think, oh well, I'll get another one. I mean, that's how I work sometimes as a reader. I'm like, wow, this author's book was really good. What else have they written?
Yep, that's exactly what I talked to somebody the other day who said the exact same thing. If you like a person's book, you're going to look to see what else they published, and you're going to read that stuff too.
Mm,
It's so important. Um, and building relationships, right, with those people. I don't think
yeah,
necessarily social media is a bad thing, but I
yeah,
think you could use it in a bad way.
yeah. You can, yeah, exactly. Like I'm sure it has its. I mean, it has its place, right?
Hmm.
Um, um, definitely people. I mean, some people are incredible readers. They'll pick up one of your books or my books, and they'll read it in a day. And so, and if they're looking for another one, they're going to get the next book, and then it's going to just keep rolling like that. I mean,
Yeah.
somebody told me, sorry, I read recently that all you need is 1,000 people who will buy anything that you produce, and then you can make a career from that.
1,000 people is impressive, though. I mean, I have a
Yeah.
novel published on Amazon that maybe has sold 3 copies, and one of those copies went to my wife. So I mean, I'm way short of 1,000 readers. I mean, you're on Twitter, you're on Facebook, definitely, because I think that's where we found each other.
Yeah.
I don't know what your followers are, but it seems impossible to get people to like any of your stuff. my my podcast has like 42 views and 1 like. So I mean, it's like, click on stuff, dude. Listen to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's wrong with that? It's not that expensive, but who are you interacting with? Are other writers who are looking to do the exact same thing? And where are the readers at? You know, I mean, Goodreads is a good place to go, I guess, because people are actually reading on there. But how do you get them
Yeah.
interested?
Yeah. But I think it does have a bit. Social media does have a bit of a place. Yeah, I've been running I have been running some Facebook ads for Rowling as a Wizard, and
Oh, interesting. How has that worked out? Because I've
it's
heard bad things.
well, I mean, it seems to be going good. I mean, that there seems to be a lot of clicks going through to the page, and people are
Purchases.
commenting on it. Um,
That's interesting. But you have one of those titles though too. When you sent me a link to your novel, I was like, all right,
yeah,
I'm looking forward to reading that. And I downloaded it immediately and I started reading it because I was interested in knowing what you were writing about, what this J.K. Rowling as a wizard thing is. And I wonder what would happen if you sent the book to J.K. Rowling.
yeah.
Have you done that yet, or
No, no, I haven't done.
contemplated it? I don't think you should be afraid because, as far as I'm aware, she is very receptive to fans writing fan fiction.
Right, right. Yeah, no, I haven't ventured down that path yet.
I have a friend in Yorkshire who would recommend that totally, and find other famous people that you would send it to as well. Um,
All right.
yeah, she wrote a death fantasy, Noah Finn and the Art of Suicide, and she was very influenced by a guy named Mitch Albom, and she right away sent a copy to that dude and a bunch of other famous people like Oprah and
Okay.
daytime talk show hosts and stuff like that. I was like, wow, that's brave, right? Getting
Yeah.
yourself out
Yeah.
there in that way. I mean, she's like that. She'll walk into a bookstore and say, hey, sell my book.
Oh
It's
wow.
fascinating. It's like, I can't do that, right? I mean, I live in New York City and I know there's a literary town, and I sit in my basement like
Yeah. 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 You got to get out there. Got to get to those bookstores, and yeah.
put your feet on the ground, right? I mean, are you still in
Yeah. That was
Switzerland?
brave. Yeah, I'm still here.
Do you think you have a physical marketplace to get your stuff out into in Switzerland, or would you have to go back to Australia or one of the other English speaking countries?
Yeah, I think it'd be more going to an English speaking country.
It would be difficult to get yourself established there because you're not a
Yeah.
local or whatever.
Yeah, not writing in German or
Well,
French.
English is a Switzerland language, though, isn't it? One of the national languages, or am I wrong?
I think it's become one. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people speak English here. Um, but no, I haven't put myself out into the public yet, and maybe I think I'm kind of more waiting for it to happen through Amazon or whatever before I would do something like that. And in fact, I've actually been thinking that I'm going to go back to trying my next book when hopefully it will be better. I'm actually thinking that I'm going to start trying to send it off to agents again, which was something that I originally did back in the day when I wrote my first book before I started self-publishing.
And what happened with agents then? Nothing, right? They black holed it, no responses,
Yeah,
or yeah, that was my experience as well.
yeah. I mean, I got one bite where they were like, "Oh, we were interested in your book. Can you send it off?" And it was some agent in New York actually, but I didn't tell them that. I think it was because they wanted someone in New York. They're like, "Oh, actually, if you can't make it to our office, then we're going to actually turn this down." But I think now though, because I've gone through the self-publishing process, and gotten positive feedback, got negative feedback, and been working on my craft as we spoke about. I think I'm at a point where I'm like, I think I could write something that an agent would be interested in. I hope.
Is it an agent that you want, or is it a publisher that you want? That's the question I'm
Oh,
currently asking myself. I mean, do you want to skip over the middle person altogether and just jump into publishing? Because I wonder, those small boutique publishers are intriguing. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
And I wonder if you could. I mean, some of those people actually follow me on Amazon, not Amazon, what's it called, Twitter, and I'm like, huh, why'd you just follow me? So I click I click on their website and I check out what they're offering, and it's like, I wonder what would happen if I sent them my manuscript or my next book, or a collection of short stories, whether or not they'd be interested.
yeah, yeah, and I haven't done that for I mean, I did it for my first one when I published Jasmine Evans and the Master of the Lamp.
Hmm.
Um, but then I've gone and I've written and published 3 more books since then, but I've never sent them off to a publisher or any of those small publishers. But I'm pretty sure I'm a better writer now. All these years later,
Well, you
I'm
have to be, right? I mean, it's like one of
yeah,
those things where you're constantly working that muscles. I mean, you're not going to get worse. You're definitely going
yeah,
to get better. You're going to notice the mistakes you're making, right? I mean, that's probably what's happening, is you're noticing the stuff that needs to get ironed out.
yeah,
And you're getting critiques too. People are sending you comments. I mean,
yeah,
the nicer ones are probably going to say, "Oh, this is an amazing book. Read it, read it, read it." And the other ones are going to be like, "Well, I read the book and I wish it had blah blah blah." And then you're going to look for the blah blah blah, and you're going to fix it going forward. Do you do
yeah.
critique partnering? Do you let people read your book before you publish it?
I send it off to an editor, and of course, my wife reads it.
Uh-huh.
But
I've noticed that wives are amazing in certain regards, but as far as being honest about your work, my wife always tells me how good everything is. Oh, it was really good. And then a few days later she'll say, "You know, it was confusing." Like, oh man. You can't do that to me. You just said it was amazing. I was already accepting the Pulitzer Prize in my mind, and you just turned it around. Yeah, I'm looking into critique partners now in terms of like getting some honest feedback about my work. So,
Yeah,
you know,
that's a good idea.
damage that ego a little bit, bruise it up, rip those muscles
Yeah,
down so that they build into something stronger. You can't write in an echo chamber, basically, because that makes it impossible to actually be the best artist you can be, I think.
yeah. So what genre are you writing in right now?
Science fiction.
Oh, you're writing in science
Um,
fiction too,
yeah.
because that's not what your first the compounded interest wasn't science fiction, right?
No, it was more literary fiction,
Yeah,
more of narrative fiction. Yeah, and I've been really, for the last year or so, I've been playing around with fantasy and science fiction a lot.
yeah.
And this novel started out as something that it now currently isn't. Now it's turning into more of a dystopian space opera based on technology type thing.
Yeah, I think that you made a good decision there, like going to science fiction, because I've been reading quite a few indie authors, and they've got a few books out there, they've got tons of reviews, and I'm reading their books, and I'm like, okay, this is okay. It's a bit mechanical, but there's room here for better writers, and it's interesting seeing their work, and I don't you know I guess critiquing other science fiction writers. I'm like, there's room here for better writers, and
Yeah, and I try to look at Compounded as a fantasy piece too. I mean, it basically follows this dude on a quest, but it just doesn't work that way. It's basically
yeah.
literary fiction, and there's no escaping it. But
Mm,
I love fantasy and science fiction. I mean, it's something I enjoy reading.
mm.
In fact, going back to the whole discussion about world builders, have you read any of Andy Weir's stuff? The
Uh,
Martian, or his new one, Artemis?
I haven't, no, but I've seen the movie.
Oh man, his books are amazing. What he does with his world is just fascinating. I mean, The Martian was interesting because he kind of co-wrote it with a bunch of his followers. But Artemis, I mean, he spent a year working on the backstory, the world that his moon colony was going to be, and it's a
Oh, that's right. That's
bland
only just come
story.
out, right?
Yeah, he just published it. It's a bland story. It doesn't really do a lot, but the world in which that story takes place in is amazing.
Is it in the same world as The Martian?
I don't know. I would imagine, maybe, possibly, but it doesn't mention
Okay.
the characters in The Martian or a Mars mission or anything like that. I mean, it's, it's basically about an old West town, but on the moon. And that's basically what it
Right.
is. But
Oh,
you got
okay.
to write all this technology about why the colony on the moon exists the way it does.
Hmm.
So in that sense, it's Andy Weir from The Martian, but he has more of a thriller type plot developing.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Yeah. I mean, you know what? I'm going to get onto it. I'm going to get that. I'm going to get that book and I'm going to check it out because it's definitely in the genre that I'm writing in. So I'm going to have a look at it.
I love that guy. His story is amazing too, in terms of coming from kind of an indie writer standpoint, writing on his website, working during the day, and then he pops.
Mm.
You read The Egg?
No.
Oh my God, dude, you got to read The Egg. I'm sending you a link to it. I'm sending you a link to it right now. I had one of my authors on Mirage, my other podcast, read a version of it. So it's not actually on my YouTube channel if you want to look for it there, but
Okay.
I'm going to send you the actual written version from his website right now. It's short, it's real easy to read, but it's basically what started him. This stupid story got like translated into 30 languages or something like that, and it's been downloaded hundreds of millions of times. It's
And
why
this
we
is
know Andy Weir.
okay. Oh, this is Andy Weir. Right. Right. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It's amazing, right? Like, it can happen. It can happen. This is why we persevere, right?
This is why we do. I mean, I don't know. Is this why we do what we do, or do we have something deeper inside of us that are making us do it? That's what I wonder. I'm just like, why do I put myself into this point where, I have to wake up at whatever time in the morning so I can get my writing in before the rest of my day starts?
Yeah.
Hard, right?
You do that. You wake up in the morning, right? And do it, do you? So when you write?
Yeah. And when do you write?
I'm a nighttime writer. I'm a
Oh, you
night.
are.
Yeah.
I mean,
But
it's after the family goes to bed. It's not while the family's around you. You have to find that alone time to do it. I mean, you're taking
yeah.
away time from something else that maybe might be a little bit more enjoyable. Video game playing or movie watching or TV or something, getting drunk or whatever. You're writing instead. And
Yeah.
it's a fascinating idea. I mean, why do you put yourself into that painful situation every single day, writing novel after novel? I mean, the first one was hard, right? I mean, you wanted some kind of recognition for it. You sent it out into the world, and you ended up you published it yourself because you wanted the world to enjoy it.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating experience being this thing called a writer.
Mm. Yeah. I like it. I like it. And we talked about this as well. Like, I think the last time about it, the creative process is fun. At the end when it's ready to be published, every writer probably wants a lot of people to buy that book.
Hell
But
yeah.
but the process is fun as well. The process is fun.
Now, let me ask you this. How do you nip yourself in the bud? How do you say, okay, it's done. I'm going to let the world witness it. It's ready for reading. How do you tell yourself, okay, now I'm going to publish this thing. I'm not going to work on it anymore. It's finished to the point where I'm satisfied.
Yeah, good question. I don't know. I think once I've read it through a couple of times, and then I've sent it to the editor to an editor, and get it back. Yeah, then I've been pretty much ready. But I think I lack patience sometimes, and particularly with maybe some of my earlier books. I've lacked patience with getting out. I'm like, I'm done. I've got to get this out. People are going to love this.
That that's some awesome ego too, right? And people are going to love this. And for me, it's always like, I want to write something else. I'm done with this. I've worked on this for a year. I want to write something else.
Right,
I
right,
want
yeah,
this to be over
and
with.
I think it's a lot of writers, from what I've read. Everyone's always, I've got a ton of ideas constantly going through, going, okay, oh, maybe I could write a book about this, but yeah, I
Do you do short fiction at all?
well, Phantom was short fiction to begin with, and because I was publishing that as short fiction, and then I pulled it to, and then realized that I had it, and I was publishing it one after the other originally.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was, so I pulled that together eventually. But I've you can't actually download the short versions anymore. I only have the whole, all of them together. So I've sort of done that, but so I guess I did, yeah.
Yeah, that's where I get my juices out, and that's where I get my I've got to write something else. I do that every single month. I write short fiction just because I enjoy starting the story so much. Get that kind of itch out of the way, but then they develop into longer things. You want to just keep writing them.
Yeah, and I was actually going to bring that. I was actually going to ask you that question, and I think that's how I struggle a bit with short fiction, because and I see, and there's tons of short fiction competitions out there, and sometimes I think, perhaps I'll write a short fiction and write it, but I feel like the scope of the story always becomes longer. And
I do word counts. In terms of stopping, a lot of what I'm doing now is sending a lot of stuff out to magazines. I'm not being very successful at the moment, but my idea is, in terms of marketing, you have to put your name in front of people who actually read, and those readers, like you said, 1,000 of them following you, you've got potentially a successful career developing. And a lot of magazines don't want things longer than 10,000 words, or they don't want things shorter than 1,000 words. So, I mean, you have a 9,000 word area to play with. And once you reach that 10,000 words, you're like, okay, I'm done writing this thing. Now I either need to find a really good place to end it, or I need to trim the living crap out of what I've already written down to something more manageable.
Yeah, right. So what short fiction do you write? Is it science fiction?
Science fiction and fantasy, mainly science fiction, though. Everything has a science fiction element. I love writing about technology. I love writing about technology mixed in with a little bit of magic. Like, there is a world that I'm developing right now where I take what we think of as stars, and I've given them a sentience. And that is an idea that I want to develop, and I've written like 5 or 6 stories about that particular thing. The star, our star soul, being a godlike figure. And
yeah, sounds awesome.
I'm not sending those out necessarily. I'm sending other stuff, and they're bouncing back rejected, but that's part of the process, isn't it? It's part of getting out there and just making that muscle stronger, something that you've never used before.
Have you thought about putting them together and publishing them on
Of
Amazon?
course, yeah, but I just don't know how beneficial that'll be. A lot of people do it, but at the end of the day, what kind of weight do those short fiction pieces have? If nobody's decided to publish them, then what makes me think I should publish them? You know what I mean? I did that with my novel. I put it out there, and I kind of regret doing it. It's like I should have held on to it, because it just sits there. Is it good enough? Nobody wanted it. Nobody's reading it. I might be embarrassing myself by having it out there to begin with. So I'm not even sure. You know what I mean? It's like you can never stop questioning the decisions that you make in terms of the writing. It's just a
No, the reason why I asked, because you said you were writing a novel, right, about science fiction.
Yeah.
And I was talking to an author the other day, and she was telling me that I think she was writing in fantasy, but what she did is she had a novel ready to go, and then she put her a whole bunch of short fantasy books out there, and that assisted readers who were interested in her novel to she kind of like streamlined them through. It was like a gateway to her actual novel, which I found really interesting. She said that was a way that she managed to get a bit of success.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So she had published her short fiction that hadn't been published anywhere else on Amazon.
On Insta Freebie, she said.
Insta Freebie. I've never heard of that one.
Yeah, and apparently what it does is, because it was free, is then if you wanted to download that short story for free, then you had to enter in your email address. And so she got your email address, and then hence was able to say, hey, I've also got this other book if you're interested. And so she got something like almost 1,000 people who went and then downloaded
So it's a little bit like Wattpad in a way, but you get email addresses as payment for your effort.
Yeah, right. That's it. You get the free story, but your payment is to give your email address. That's right.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
You were
I
on,
found that interesting. I found that interesting because then you're creating an email list, right? And anyway,
yeah, and we talked about that last time, how important that is to develop a communication method with people that might potentially want to buy your stuff later on.
hmm,
I mean, what do they call it? A call to action or something like that, right? You've got something out there
right.
you want your followers to buy. You need to be able to contact your followers. Um,
Yeah,
like we already talked about, I mean, on Facebook, I discovered that there are so many writers groups, right? I mean, there's so many resources for writers on Facebook, but they're writers. You're not going to sell to writers. Writers aren't going to buy your stuff. Writers are trying to sell their own stuff. It gets
no,
frustrating.
no.
Um,
What was that movie that Owen Wilson was in where he went in the past and he talked to Hemingway?
oh God, was it Hemingway? It was a Woody Allen movie.
No, no. Woody Allen movie, yeah. And he was talking to
Yeah,
Hemingway.
I
And
didn't realize it was Hemingway. I didn't watch it. I'm a fan of Woody Allen's earlier stuff, but I don't know. The whole rumors about him make me kind of sick to my stomach.
oh yeah, yeah, sure, sure.
But
But
supposedly that
anyway,
was really good. Didn't he win like an Oscar for that, or was nominated at least?
yeah, perhaps. But anyway, there's a clip in it where Owen Wilson is having a conversation with Hemingway, and he says, "Oh, hey, would you be interested in reading my book?" And Hemingway says, you want my opinion?" He goes, "Yeah, I want your opinion." He goes, "Well, I hate it." He says, "Well, you haven't even read it yet." So the first thing is never give your writers are extremely competitive, and we're all and so there's going to be two things I'm going to say. Is one is going to be badly written, and I hate it. And the second thing is that it's going to be really good, and I'm going to be extraordinarily jealous, which will make me hate it.
It's so true. It's so true. I mean, it's like so hard to read somebody that you know's book. You're like, damn it, I should have thought of that story myself. How come? How dare he be better at this than me, or something
Yeah.
along those lines.
Yeah.
I had a buddy that I did a bunch of podcasts with, and I read his story, and he asked me to critique it or read it or whatever, and I started making comments on it. He fired me from doing the critique. He got so mad, and we're no longer buddies anymore.
Well, no.
We're like, we're so egotistical. We wouldn't even do this, right? I mean, if you think about it, at the same time of it being so arduous, we think we're going to be successful at it, or we wouldn't do it at all. You know
Right.
what I mean? And we don't want
Right.
anybody to come in and tell us that we did it wrong because, we're the best. We wouldn't have done it to begin with.
Right. Right. But it's also I for me it's I think the ego is dying, like when I first started doing it, that to be actually have written a novel, to just sit down and write that many words and that many pages was a huge accomplishment. And I was, so
In a consistent story, though, too. I mean,
in a
yeah,
yeah,
that's the,
yeah.
yeah.
But and so I think at that point I was quite sensitive about anybody critiquing it. Other than anybody who wanted to say it was absolutely brilliant, of course.
Yep. I just had somebody read the first chapter of Compounded, and they gave me some notes on it. And I'm like, I was thinking to myself, you don't know what you're talking about. You're crazy. It's awesome the way it is. And this is a novel that hasn't sold any copies. So I mean, I have to listen to somebody's critique on it. Then I
Right.
calmed down a little bit, and I'm like, okay, you know what? Maybe you are right. Maybe it does need to start with a little bit more action instead of being this lingering narrative about this guy's past. Like, okay.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's the other thing. I mean, if you can trust somebody to read your novel, you should listen to them because not only are they writers, they're readers probably before anything else.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And I have a friend who is trying to be a writer as well, and she is going down it without the ego at all. She's written a novel, and she's like, "I'm getting an editor to do it, and I'm going to listen to what they have to say before I even publish it, and I'm going to get published by a publisher because I'm going to make this as good as it can be." And everyone does it in a different way. I've done it. I'm doing it through self-publishing. Just putting it out there and seeing what people say and getting in and taking on the feedback. And others are quite happy to do it from the beginning.
You actually did pay for somebody to edit your novel though too, didn't you? You went out and said, take a look at this and here's some money in return.
Absolutely, yeah. I've done that. I did it for Rowling as a Wizard. I did it before that got published, and I did it after I published Phantom because I got feedback from people who were saying, "I'm really liking your imagination, but there's mistakes," and so then I went and got it edited. But it's the plight of an indie author. It can be
Right?
quite,
I mean, you
can
do
be
have
quite
to be perfect,
expensive.
don't you? Was it expensive? That's what I wanted to ask you. How much did you end up spending on the actual edit?
Um, it ranged. The first time I got it done, I spent 250 on it.
Oh, it's not too bad.
Yeah, it's not too bad, but people can want a lot, for the edit, and
Yeah.
you have to. I try to find um, the right people who are in my price range.
I spoke to a indie author. She's got like 5 novels out of her series. She's been working on her career for 15 years or so. And
Yeah.
she's okay, successful wise. I mean, she's one of those mavens that kind of pull other indie authors into her circle. And she says she sends it out for content editing, and she sends it out to be grammatically edited as well. So she
Mm,
spends, I think she said something near 4 figures to get her novels every single time edited. So they're
yeah.
perfect. And
Yeah.
it's like, if you think about it, I mean, the person that's going to edit your novel at a publishing house is probably getting paid around the same amount of money by the publisher
Yeah.
just to edit these novels both those ways. It's
Yeah.
impressive
Yeah.
what we have to go
And
through.
yeah, yeah. And but as I said, it's the plight of the indie author, right? You got to figure out how much can I spend, and that's it.
Do you like the idea of calling yourself an indie author? I mean, I know we kind of discussed you going in the direction you want to go in the direction of traditionally published work. Do you think it's limiting? Like, the reason I ask is I've been currently wrestling with the idea of what an indie author is. And I wonder if it's that person who writes a novel and says, okay, it's done, and I publish it and puts it out there. And then you have other people who are doing something different, and it kind of besmirches the whole process of writing a novel.
Yeah, I'm not sure who gets put into that category of an indie author because it has that kind of fresh feeling to it. But then I see authors who are actually being published by a publishing house, winning indie author awards, and I find that well, aren't they being traditionally published? So how are they an indie author? So who exactly are the indie authors? Is it is it
I know, I don't know exactly. Am I an indie author for putting my manuscript on Amazon? I mean, basically, I was hoping for people to critique it and tell me what was wrong with it so I can become a better author because everybody who I tried to get a beta read it, failed me miserably and didn't read it at all. And then you have people like yourself who are actually gaining an audience who are doing everything on their own. But you're not
Hmm.
doing independently, right? I mean, you're reaching out for editors to actually do work for you. So independent
Yeah,
by the definition is by yourself, but you've got a workforce working for you. So that makes you not independent, but you're also somewhat successful as well, gaining an audience.
sure, sure. Yeah.
So, I mean, do you still consider yourself an independent author? I mean, what is the definition? Because I mean, there are like boutique publishers out there that are really small who aren't part of the, you know, New York scene or whatever the publishing scene.
Mm.
Are they independent?
Exactly. And this is what I was saying, like who is an indie author? But I think I think it changes. I think that depending. But what I am seeing though is I am seeing some, and I'm sure you've seen it, is indie authors who have been doing it and have gained an audience and now being picked up by publishers, which
Yeah,
is
I spoke to a guy who was an indie author. He put out a few fantasy novels, and he submitted his newest manuscript to Mark Lawrence's whatever that was called, the fantasy blog off or whatever. And he got picked up by an agent, and I think Penguin is publishing his newest series.
yeah, wow,
Like, I mean, you can pop, but it's so there's so many people out there publishing and putting their stuff out. I don't know how the success happens. I mean, you don't need a lot of people. Like you said, 1,000 people to recognize you, and then from there it'll spread. I want like 20,000 fans. That's all I want. 20,000
Yeah.
people to buy my novel every year, and then I'm good.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Asking
And
for a lot.
no, not at all. Not at all. Not at all. Get there. You'll get there, Brian. I believe in you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. You should. I'd be happy if some 20,000 people listen to my podcast. That'd be really wonderful too.
Well, I mean, yes, you keep doing these, and you never know. You never know the right
Yeah, you
person
never
who will
know.
share.
I was listening to a Joe Rogan podcast the other day, and he was speaking with one of his guests about that exact same thing. You can't stop doing it. You never know who's going to listen, who's going to find it and discover it.
Right.
And if you don't do it, you're definitely not going to get
Yeah.
discovered. You're definitely, nobody's going to listen to it, and you might as well languish at McDonald's flipping burgers or something, because there's no point in doing anything if obviously you're not doing it. So I mean, just keep doing it and
Yeah.
doing it and doing it, and get better, and realize that you're not perfect, and have as little ego as possible, because at the end of the day, ego is going to kill your career, right? I mean,
Yeah, but also though, in the same breath, where you're saying you just keep doing it and doing it and doing it. Anybody, when you watch these speeches by people who are successful, they all seem to have this same theme of, like, you've got to work hard. Like everyone kind of looks at me and thinks, oh wow, you're successful. Why not me? It's like, well, it's because I worked hard. I didn't.
yeah,
I mean, look, there's always the person that you hear about that just that just falls into it, right? But the majority of them are like going, no, I definitely put in the effort to do this and worked my ass off. And
I mean, who would you put in that category of just falling into it? I mean, is that a fair question? Can you think of anybody that you know of that just fell into it? I mean, it always seems like there's a lot of work behind everything, even like child
yeah,
actors. I mean, there's a lot of work behind the scenes by the parents who do a lot
sure.
of, the effort to get their kid under that spotlight. They might work out to failure later on in the child's life, but there's always work.
Yeah,
Always
yeah,
work.
absolutely. Yeah, and that's it. Like you said, you've just got to keep doing it, and so hopefully. But in terms of writing, though, I know I've got to do it, but one thing that I've seen, we haven't discussed um, is I'm putting together this world building, which we started off this conversation with,
Mm-hmm.
and this plan that I'm putting together. There's 7 books that I've got there, and what I need to do, what other authors are doing, is I've got to publish them all on the same day, because I'm noticing this trend on Amazon is science fiction authors, fantasy authors who are suddenly indie authors who are suddenly becoming successful with these series that I also want to be in that genre. And they're either publishing all of the books on the same day, or they're publishing them within a couple of weeks of each other. And I find that really, really interesting, because bringing it back to the conversation of J.K. Rowling, who I was studying, her world building, and how she did that. This was before the Amazon days, where she could take 2-3 years, and I wonder if readers don't have the patience for that anymore. That they're not willing to stick with.
Yeah, and then you have like the G.R.R. Martins, who get to a certain point in their series and they're like, they fail their readers completely. Dude, where's your next book at? And he's like, oh, I have no clue where it is. Or that guy who wrote The Name of the Wind. I read 2 of his books. He promised a 3rd. It's been almost a decade. Come on, dude. What's up with that?
Yeah, it's really funny. My wife brings that up all the time about that author. I go, where is he? What's going on?
And then I hear he sold the rights to his novels to be a television series. I'm like, well, that sucks. Now that's the model for successful fantasy and science fiction authors, is they sell their work and they don't bother writing another novel. I mean, we all know that the novels are better than any kind of media they'll put on top of it. So it's like, huh, it's interesting. But no, that's a great point, because do you
Yeah.
want people to hunger for what you have? And if they hunger about it, then they build up a fandom, and then the fandom will make you, it's not about money, but it'll make you lots and lots and lots and lots of money at the end of the
Yeah.
day. But if you
Yeah.
publish every single book right away, does it give it people an opportunity to salivate for the next one?
Well, that's the way it's always been, and a lot of authors aren't doing that anymore, and I find that really interesting because they're getting over 50 reviews on their first book, and then just as many on the next books, and they publish. And I look at the publishing date. I'm like, this person, man or woman, published these all pretty quickly. And I think that they had the books ready before the first book is published. They have all of their books ready, and they're like, here is my chunk of books. And perhaps they're either publishing them all on the same day, or they're publishing them all, 2 weeks or a couple of months within each other. And it's building up that excitement, which is something that I think I'm going to try to do. Is I've got these 7 books that I'm planning on putting together, but I'm going to write them all before I publish the first book, so that they're all ready to go.
So you're talking about 500,000 words worth of effort before you.
That's right.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a lot of and this is it. What we come back to, that what you were saying about just doing it. It's good. It's got to be done, and because that's the genre that I want to write in, and hence why the planning process and the organization has kind of come into play with me, rather than writing it out of my head. Just keeping that plan in my head.
How long is it going to take you to get to that 500,000 words?
I have no idea. No idea.
Isn't that a little daunting? I mean, you're somebody who's published, oh God, I can't remember how many books the first series was, but definitely Phantom is one big book now.
Yeah.
Or is it? Yeah, it's one big book. So you're talking about at least 2 books, and then your third one, J.K. Rowling, just came out. Don't you want to capitalize on the momentum that you've gathered and get something else out there in a year? Or are you thinking that a year is enough time to write this 500,000 words?
Yeah, like I said earlier on in our conversation, I'm not an expert on this yet, but I hopefully perhaps maybe in a year's time we'll be sitting down again, and I'll be saying, Brian, I did it. I'm going to give you the secret sauce.
The secret sauce, the recipe. I was talking
The
about
recipe.
recipes the other day, in terms of marketing, how, Joanna Penn and people like that have, it seems, this old recipe, and now we're kind of developing a new one. It'd be nice to know what that recipe is in terms of success. And you know what? Maybe we already know. Maybe it is effort. Maybe it's just trying really hard and not getting discouraged, right? I mean, just being that person that remains. I tell my wife the metaphor of, I don't know if they have the same thing in Australia or Switzerland, but radio stations would do this thing with a car where, if you're the last person with your hand on it, you win, right? You've probably seen that in sitcoms or something along those lines.
Oh, right. Yeah.
I want to be that last person with my hand on the car so that I get the car. I get the reward. And I think that's what it is. Work your ass off and be the last person standing at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, there's a lot of people with that work ethic nowadays too. So I mean, you're competing with a lot of people, and I think that's where community comes from as well. I have a friend, J.E. Perazzi, who gives me the quote, a rising tide lifts all boats, or something along those lines. And if one person's successful, they might end up pulling a bunch of other authors with them as well. You never know. I mean, be friendly, have people read your stuff, listen to criticisms, and try to be a good person, because really, ego is the death of success, potentially.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and definitely, I mean, even being here on this on your podcast, it's part of the community that I've definitely been building up, and maybe perhaps that community and the effort will mesh together, and
I
and
hope
I'll
so.
get
I
some.
mean, at the end of the day, it's not the one-offs that I enjoy the most. It's the people that I can have back on the show and continue our conversation. Because I mean, you have that
Yeah,
nervousness the first time with what are we going to talk about? Who is this person? Are they going to appreciate it? Am I going to get yelled at for saying the wrong thing? And then at the end of the day, when you have a good time and it's a great conversation and that person comes back and says, let's have another conversation or a third or a fourth, and it's like, okay, great. We're actually establishing something here that we can build off of. And that's a wonderful, wonderful feeling
yeah,
that I would not have had if I hadn't started this thing. And that's where the profit comes in for me. It's not money. It's not viewership. It's just having relationships with people who want to do the same thing I do, which is tell great stories that people want to read.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah,
Where are well, I mean, we've talked for just a little bit over an hour now.
yeah.
What do you think? Have we missed anything in terms of J.K. Rowling is a wizard? It's a great book. I really enjoyed reading it. It's an interesting idea. Love the title. You're going to send it to J.K. Rowling and have her read it.
Yeah. Or I'm going to send it to J.K. Rowling. She's going to say, "Can you please take that offline now?"
No, I've heard that she likes fan stuff, and this kind of encapsulates that world of fandom that she's kind of appreciative of. And
Yeah,
also, I noticed
maybe
that
she
you
will.
didn't put J.E. Rowling, so it's like a different name completely. It's G Rowling, so it's not even about her.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Exactly, exactly. I,
Did you do that deliberately, or was that just kind of a stylistic point?
I haven't thought about it, but I have noticed that I did that, but it wasn't done intentionally. It was just the way it was done. But I did put a disclaimer at the start of the book saying, that I don't know if you saw that, but all of these characters are, even the ones based on real people are fictional. Are fictional.
Oh, it's disappointing. So you're saying that J.K. Rowling is not a wizard?
Well, you never know. You never know, right? There's a lot of fan theories out there. They actually think, in my research that I was doing about this world building, there are some fans out there that believe that she's actually Rita Skeeter from the journalist from the Harry Potter universe,
I
and
love
that
it.
she wrote all the stories down of Harry Potter in order to make a whole bunch of money.
Man, I mean, I know we're nearing the end of our conversation, but I think that she would not be the person that she is today if she hadn't put her novels out as slowly as she did. I just think that,
Yeah,
she capitalized on this thing that started developing this head of steam. And it wasn't like that when she published The Sorcerer's Stone. It wasn't like that when she published the second or the third one. But when the fourth one popped, it was like, oh man, who's this person with these three other books? That's what it was like for me anyway. I read the third one. I'm like, oh, okay, let's
yeah,
get this fourth one in my hands because I can't wait. I
right,
mean, yeah,
exactly.
it's very fascinating. And if she had all 7 books out and I had been introduced to her, I probably would have read all 7 of them. You're absolutely 100% correct in that. I was hungry for it. But sometimes it's better to go to the buffet hungry than having already eaten 4 books. You know what I mean? I don't know. I look forward. I cannot wait until you finish publishing these 7 novels so you could tell me the experience that you've had.
Yeah, sure. I'd love to come back and tell you all about it.
So let's finish the podcast with my 3 normal questions. Well, I already asked you kind of one of them. You said you didn't really have it, but I mean, you are a hard worker and you work your butt off, and I have to appreciate that, and I definitely respect it. What is your secret to the hard work? I mean, how do you do it? How do you hit your desk every day and start typing away on that keyboard? What kind of motivation do you provide yourself?
Good question. What motivation do I provide myself? I think it's to finish, and that I've been writing since I was really young. I knew that this is what I wanted to do, and so I just keep doing it. That's my motivation is to finish stuff, put it out there, and hopefully people are going to really enjoy it.
Do you think that's a personality thing, or does everybody have it? The capability of just finishing. I mean, it seems to be a problem in today's society, people not finishing what they start.
I think I definitely went through that though as well. I mean, I don't know if you had this experience, but had a lot of stories that I started and probably wrote quite a lot of this story, but then left it because then I got distracted by a new idea, which I thought was better. And I think as I've matured, like to actually finish is important. And so that's the
Yeah,
process.
I think as well. I mean, that is a maturity thing, isn't it? When you've matured, you will be able to say, I'm going to finish the dishes. I'm going to finish the dog walk. I'm going to finish my novel. I'm going to do
Yeah,
the chore because the chore needs to get done.
right. Exactly.
Man, that's a great answer. Second question is, what are you reading? What's on your table? What's on your nightstand? What's in your Kindle?
What's on my Kindle right now is because I really actually really enjoyed um, the world building and learning from a great author. And I in this J.K. Rowling as a wizard, I write in the first person, and it's the first book that I've published that I wrote in the first person. And so, who has done that really well? But none other than Susan Collins. And so,
Oh, interesting.
yeah, so I've just finished reading the first Hunger Games, and I haven't actually. I kind of have seen the first movie, but not really. But I'm so impressed with how good she is at writing in the first person. So I'm going to read um, the second one in the series, just because this series that I want to write in, the science fiction one as well, is going to be written in the first person as well. And so
You
that's
know
what
what
I'm
else
reading
is
right now.
really good in the first person is the guy who wrote Ready Player One. It's written in the first person as
Okay.
well. It's wonderful book, really good, and it's a dystopian future too, which I don't know if you're writing in kind of the more dystopian aspects of our future, but it's a brilliant book as well. Highly recommend. I can't remember his name though right now, so I guess I could look him up.
Yeah, I know the title.
It's gonna
To
be a movie, so definitely
Yeah,
read the book before you see the movie.
yeah, got to be done. So that's and I'm reading a few indie author science. I always like to keep a few indie author science fictions on my Kindle. I can't just to keep tabs with the genre as well. See what other indie authors are writing, particularly people who, as I said, have written series and I seem to appear to be doing really well. So just to see I'm just opening up my Kindle right now so I can tell you.
Oh, good. I was gonna ask if you had any specific authors that you wanted to mention.
So I'm checking out a few ones. So I'm reading a guy called Jas Jasper T. Scott, and he's written an indie author who's written a book called Excelsior. And also I picked up and so I've got a few science fictions on there right now. Starship Conquest by David Van Dyke. So all indie authors in the science fiction genre that seem to be doing well.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I'll give both those a shot and see if I can get into their work. I'm currently reading, I'm still reading Sapiens. It's the book I'm always going back to. And oh, dude, I gotta say, it's magnificent in terms of like looking at humanity and who we are and where we've come from. It's a great book to pick up every once in a while and just read a few hundred pages of. Actually, I think the book is
Yeah.
a few hundred pages. It's just taking me forever to read it. But Artemis
Okay.
and Artemis and Scott Kelly's book, his experience a year on the space station. I
Okay.
recommend that too, man. That was painful. I can imagine constant light, constant noise up there for a year and then come back and your body has to readjust to gravity. Like it's a ton of weight on your shoulders. It's just an amazing piece of writing.
Yeah.
Astronauts really are impressive. I mean, they just seem to be more than human. You know what I mean? To do what they're doing and to live in such an inhospitable place is an impressive experience. Yeah. So where can we find you on the World Wide Web?
Yeah, sure. Like, definitely visit my Facebook page is facebook.com/Alex McD author. And check me out on Amazon as well. Like, go check out J.K. Rowling as a wizard. It seems to be getting a bit of traction online.
Great. That's awesome. You deserve it.
All right, cool, man. Thanks for having.
Are you on Twitter at all or
Oh yeah, I'm on Twitter. Yeah, Alex, and it's the same. Alex McD author at Alex McD author. Yeah.
okay, excellent. And as before, and hopefully again, I really enjoyed this conversation. I thank you so much for being on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, mate.